Okay, well, this afternoon, what we are at one of my contracts. This is an old, like a theatre originally, but a bingo hall that has now been converted into a church. This is heavily used by public, and so they're on contract for mice and rats. There was a serious issue before we took on the contract, and over a period of months we've been able to kind of reduce that, and now we've implemented a more proactive approach to pest control. There are perimeter bait boxes which obviously monitor any external issues, and we also have many internal bait boxes which also bring and control the issue within the block. Okay, these are standard external bait boxes which the rodent has access in and out. We put a bait within these sections. I bag them because during the winter times slugs and snails kind of just eat the poison, so we put them in there basically to prevent them. When we began this contract, there wasn't as many of these bait boxes around, but the ones that were completely consumed all the time. And over the course of various months we were able to reduce that amount of consumption of the poison, and then once we get to a stage where it's completely free of activity, we turn the bait to a non-toxic bait. This is just to go along with regulations, but it also, the rodents can still consume it, and the moment we then start to see the non-toxic being consumed again, we then revert back to toxic bait. But currently we're doing okay, and these are just monitoring systems now, and then if anything tries to re-establish itself, it will just knock them down straight away. So we're now in the alleyway that is obviously shared with the church that we do the contract with, but the backs of the street vendors share the alleyway. We have like food outlets, there's bookies, there's various different outlets here that have to come and use the same alleyway to dispose of their waste. This area, as you can tell, causes problems because the environment is right for rodents to flourish. Behind you, as we can see shortly, there's the bin stores, and as I say, once you start to leave materials and things like this, they then can use them as harborages and nesting areas. When I first began here, there was a huge rat issue problem up and down this alleyway. It was related to one of these shops. Basically an old toilet block was converted into a staff room, but they did not block off the outlet. They just put a little bit of timber over it. Now at night, rodents were obviously coming out of the sewage system and in and running around the shop, so we had to rip this up. On the day that happened, there was 2 or 3 of them out already, which scuttled. One went down and one was trying to escape, so we're jumping up in the air and all of this kind of madness. But all we did is we capped off properly the top, reset the flooring. The staff room's now fine, and it also helped in the alleyway to prevent rodents from entering the building in which we currently serve. So we've just looked at one of the bait boxes, and what we have here is obviously what could easily be mistaken for rodent activity, but with experience we can tell that this is done by slugs or snails, because they leave this sort of discharge here. So again, this is one of the reasons why we put it in the bag, because that would have happened a lot quicker. So again, what we'll do is we'll clean that out, re-put baits within the bag, and then seal them to the box in case rodents come in the future. Yeah, the reason why we attach the bait to the points, because if it tries to take the bait out, a non-target species could potentially take it. So we attach it within the bait station so the rodents can come in, feed, and then leave. See that? And see there. What they are gnawing done by rodents. Their teeth, they chew on them. Now a rat teeth continuously grow, a bit like our nails. So just by nature, they have to gnaw or the teeth will continuously protrude and sometimes penetrates the bottom of their jaw. So they're going to chew, they're constantly going to chew, and there's obviously evidence. I'm not saying this was done between each kind of service visit, but because we've inherited an old box, that has happened in the past, so it's worth highlighting. But you can see that hole there in the grid. So what was happening is the rodents were persistently running up and down the water outlet, and they gnawed their way out of that. So at one stage we had to burrow bait it, which means that we attached bait to wiring and then attached it to the grid that left the bait within the channel, and on several visits they completely consumed all of the bait. So often what you find is that there's, as I say, the outlets from the shops, they leave their products out in the alleyway, which provides a food. Now it's basically like old oil and fat. As gross as that is a meal. And again, if we look down here, we have the same issue. Now the church are in conversation with the tenants here and tell them to be on it, but on a regular basis we need to keep highlighting this, because if it's left out it draws rodents and then it affects my client, and so therefore we can force the issue if necessary. Though it may not be known, rodents are unable to kind of vomit effectively, and so what happens is when they consume the poison, even if they realize during eating it that it isn't good for them or they're feeling something that's wrong, they won't be able to remove that. This is just I don't know what you want, a freak of nature, a God-given gift, but it's so it helps us, because whatever they start to consume, it then obviously starts to control. So these are internal bait stations. We use a kind of applicator that's a bit like your sealants and stuff like that. It's Talent. This is for mice. The bait boxes work on the same principle as the external ones. Mice have the freedom to be able to go in and out. Mice do not consume their full amount of food in one sitting. They will have multiple feeds. So this is another reason why we put many of these around, because they will take a small bit here. It probably won't have the effect depending on body mass, but then by the time they've had several feeds, the job has been done. And again, what we try and do, and often I see it, we make sure that the holes are against the wall, because rodents tend to run along the side of the wall. They use that as a form of protection. It's one-sided cover, and so if the bait was placed that way, all they do is pop over it. Whereas if the gaps are against the wall, they can run in there, they find the food, then we control mice. So our job allows us into many different areas of buildings where generally the public don't get to see. We're currently going to go under the stage of the church now, but you need to duck down. But these are obviously where mice tend to flourish. When I first began the contract, I would enter here and mice would just run around. For a fair bit of time now, we've been able to control that. Right. So under here, we're safe to be able to have open bait. This is because the environment, not a lot of people obviously come here. This is a grain-based bait. It's got the same active ingredient as the baits that we're using above in the concealed boxes. Now, if rats eat these, they consume the whole of the grain, which obviously has an effect. What mice tend to do is they chomp at it, they break it up, and it leaves like little flaky bits. This has been fine, and it's been fine for the last few visits, so it's about checking it, making sure it's still palatable, and you know, keep doing our job. Have to go crawling in various different little spaces, but like I said, when we first come here, they were running around, and I would look into this this area and just watch them running around. But we've now brought this completely under control, and so I don't necessarily have to go in there much because I have a bait station directly at the front. I monitor that. If that is consumed, I then go crawling again. So as you can see on this grain, you have various bits of grain that have been gnawed upon. That's mass activity. But within a building like this, it's about maintaining, it's about kind of being on top of the problem and not allowing it to flourish. And so though we have activity there, it's not major like it was, but that is obviously a sign that a couple of mice are still running about. And so that though we have a baiting system in place, we know that it's never going to turn into an infestation or as bad as what it was when we first took over. So this is the internal part of the building, which is the auditorium, and I'm blessed to have the client in which I deal with to do the pest control. So since we've been here, has there been any sort of improvement?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When you first came, we had was it just after COVID?
Pro-kill, I think.
Yeah. And we were we kind of had a few mice sort of beginning to run into the auditorium, and the perimeters were kind of, we saw signs of mice and rats there, and you came in, and it's great now. We've got, we've cleaned up the whole area.
Brilliant.
We're very pleased.
And so one of the things that I obviously spoke to you about was having a more proactive approach to pest control, because too often people sort of go, okay, it's resolved now, you guys go, but...
And at first, when you first told me about that, I thought, let me just get rid of the rats and go back to normal. But then I realised after that, that we do need that ongoing...
protection, sort of.
Protection, and help, which actually keeps the place good. Now we're very pleased.
I mean, as we've highlighted today, there are small activities still, but
we live in East London. We would always have that, but we're at a very manageable rate. We're not seeing any mice or rats running around.
Brilliant.
They're all underground or around, but not on our premises.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the size of this building, it would be like unrealistic to assume that we would have completely mice free. And as you know, as I was saying earlier on, one of the great things that you do here is there's not much food consumed, so alternative food source ain't a problem, because that also creates the environment where they flourish. And you guys are listening to my recommendations, so
it's good. It's been good.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you kind of giving us some feedback.
I'll shake your hand, but you've got gloves.
Let's do an elbow.
All right.
Thank you very much.